Today's anime is going to be pretty brief because the only show that airs on Saturdays that I'm watching is Lord El-Melloi II's Case Files, the Fate Zero sequel starring our boy Waver Velvet. And I will say that whereas in the first episode I felt like I was, watching the same character just a few years grown up, now that we've gotten into the story proper and a lot more time seems to have passed, he's being voiced by what I assume is an entirely new actor, or else that actor just found a way to make his balls drop hard, because goddamn, his voice is a lot deeper and his demeanor is just overall very different. He comes off as, a much more storied man. I'm not even sure how much time is supposed to have passed, because I'm pretty sure this is still before Fate Stay Night, which, there should only be like a 10-year gap, I think, between Zero and Stay Night, so I don't know if he's in his late 20s. He's acting very different, is my point. He's basically like a master mage, magic detective man at this point. I guess I'm a little bit disappointed that we didn't see more of his evolution from the, where the previous episode was to this one. As I understand it, that episode was, a lot of it was anime original content, and it was just kind of to sort of bridge the gap between the two shows. But this first proper episode is a very traditional murder mystery, a la something like Detective Conan. I just realized I don't have my microphone on me. That's much better, isn't it? Of course, even if this is basically a Detective Conan episode, it is still set in the Fate universe and heavily uses the lore and the mechanics of how magic works in that universe to what I thought was pretty interesting effect. I mean, the main appeal of this episode to me was less about whether or not the intrigue of this particular mystery was noteworthy, which I would say it's not in particular. It's not like an amazing murder mystery story. It's not one where you could really probably predict how it was going to turn out, because you have to learn the mechanics of how the world even works as it's going along. But that's what it does well. I would even say better than I've ever seen in any of the other Fate incarnations that I've consumed. It uses this mystery as a platform to make the mechanics of the magic more clear. And not just the mechanics in the sense of like literally how magic functions in this world, but the mechanics of the society that the magic is used in. We learn things, reestablish things about like how mage lineages work, how a father would treat his daughter as a magus, the different aesthetics that belong to different schools of magic, how those have evolved over time, and how that evolution has kind of thrown people into, thrown their pride into a spiral, if you will. The mystery revolves around a guy who was a mage of the stars. He uses star magic, and the entire magecraft had been built around a theory that was uprooted in the 17th century and totally shifted, but like the family still uses like a classical style of this magic, and so part of the mystery revolves around him using a different style than what he had used before. All that stuff I thought was good world building. It made me care more about Fate magic systems than I have ever cared before, because it had a relevant purpose and was explained in clear terms with application, which is something that I haven't seen much of. I mean, granted, I'm not the most experienced with Fate. I have not read the original visual novel. I have not consumed all of its side stories and all that stuff, but in general, whenever they start talking about the in-depth mechanics of Fate, I tend to check out, but because of the fact that, again, it was, being applied to a story where all of this information is important to getting a full grip on the situation at hand, it just made it easier to pay attention to and care about. So, yeah, I thought that this was a cool use of the mechanics of the story. The characters, Waver, again, is basically just a very serious, brooding kind of detective guy. He's fine. His partner, Gray, is a quiet but kind of oddly Genki girl. I suspect she's some kind of Saber somehow. She's in some way related to Saber because she looks like Saber, and every Fate has some kind of Saber for some stupid reason. So I think she's probably a Saber of some denomination. I don't know exactly what that means, but, you know, that's just my suspicion based on what this episode seems to be suggesting. She seems pretty cool, although the English that she breaks out during the fight scene is cringeworthy and ridiculous. She just keeps saying rhymes like grave, glaive, gave, and then she says grave for you before slicing through the enemy. Cheesy as fuck, stupid as hell, in a way that they had to know. There's also this insistence on the phrase why done it, because instead of a who done it, the real question is why done it. And they say it in English, why done it. Like, it's ridiculous. So yeah, there's some cheese in there, but I mean, I don't think it's unfitting with the tone. This show definitely doesn't feel like it takes itself as seriously as most other incarnations of Fate do. I mean, Fate has always had a little bit of a cheekiness to it, but this show it's just not as like dark and brooding as like a Fate Zero. So yeah, I'm still enjoying the show. I thought it was a pretty solid episode. Wasn't as good as episode 1. The characterization wasn't really there. The murder mystery plot in itself wasn't that interesting, but the mechanics of the world were interesting, and I like that we established so much of it right now, so early on, so that like as we go forward, I'm sure that all of these things will be more relevant in the future, that we will be glad we know all this stuff about how magic works in the Fate world before we go, exploring the detective case files of a magic guy. And I think there's going to be more of an overarching plot. I don't believe this is an episodic show, so looking forward to that as well. And that's it for this episode of today's anime. As always, support me on Patreon if you want to help me to make more of these videos. Even if you just pledge $1, you get access to like 100 hours of content. And, if you pledge $5, you get the 2 weeks review. A new episode's going to come out tomorrow talking about all the stuff I got up to in the last 2 weeks. Going to try to do something tonight just so I have something to talk about on the 2 weeks review, because I don't have that much to talk about because I've been working nonstop for the last 2 weeks. I still have a couple more t-shirts for sale. Just posted a video about that. A few larges, a few extra larges left. They're almost gone though. So if you wanted one of those, make sure you jump on it. That's all I gotta plug this episode. See you tomorrow.